Hello! Welcome to my Rastakhan's Rumble spoiler review series thingamajib. Like normal, I like to wait until all of the cards are out so I can evaluate the whole set all at once. So here we're going to do Druid real quick because they dumped on Druid this time. And then we're going to do, I like to do an RNG reassessment of like the kinds of random things you can expect to happen in the game. And we'll just jam that in here at the beginning. So let's try to get through the Druids real quick. I think they were terrified of Druid and what they've made, so they didn't really give them any good cards. But yeah, so Pounce is actually pretty good. It's basically backstab. It's a lot worse than backstab. It can't ignore taunt, and you take damage. You don't even get the armor to like compensate for that, like with claw or something. But backstab type effects are still very, very good. Like free removal. Super important for tempo, so I could see considering this for like token style Druid decks. Probably one of the better Druid cards. That being said, this does not justify any of the hero attack cards that they printed after this at all. I have no idea what this archetype is. It's complete trash. Pounce is good, but all of the other cards are complete trash. And just as an aside, I'm really disappointed in Blizzard for not printing way back in Nax. I don't even remember the name of it, but it was in like the second encounter. There was like a 3-mana 2/4 that just gave the boss +1 attack permanently. And they've never reprinted that like as an actual card in like 5 years. And this would have been the perfect time. Did they like forget they made that card already? Or I don't know. Anyways, Spirit of the Raptor, complete garbage. You have to kill one thing to break even, and Druid is better card draw than 1 mana 0/3 draw a card. And you're not going to kill multiple things. You don't want to be building a deck around things like Claw and Bite and Nash. Is Nash the 3-mana one? Like, they're not abysmal cards, but they're not as good as what you can be doing in Druid, and this does not justify them at all. Savage Striker, same problem. This card actually could be good, but is bad. Let's be careful how we phrase that. Even with like the hero card, it's a 2-mana 2/3 deal 3, which is really good. Medivh's Valet was really good, but Medivh's Valet was really good in the early game. This is in the late game. You're Druid, you want to play Wild Growth instead. Maybe in the future, this card could be something. It's actually a really cool design, but I don't see it actually doing anything. War Druid Lottie is one of the best cards, maybe the best Druid card. So it's a 1/6 taunt, 1/2 poison, stealth, 4/2 rush, and 1/4 spell damage, I believe. And all of those are pretty mediocre, but not like terrible. And this is like versatility is really, really, really powerful. Like more than people realize. One of the problems people had with like the spoilers of branching paths and reviewing that effectively. Is they didn't understand, like every single mode of branching paths is bad. Every mode is a bad card that you wouldn't put into your deck, other than maybe they gain 12 armor, because Healing Potion did see play. But other than that, they're all inefficient. But when you put it all together, it's one of the best Druid cards ever printed in the history of the game. I don't think this is branching paths tier, but it's a lesson to learn that versatility is more powerful than you might think. So let's look at the mode. So 1/6 taunt. If you're playing a taunt in the early game, you're trying to slow down your opponent's rush of minions. You want to maybe pick away at stuff, but mostly you're just gaining a bunch of health and slowing them down. 6 is a lot of health, so it does a good job at that. The 4/2 rush, that is on par removal for a 3-mana spell. It's like the what's the soul whatever? Shadow Blast. Shadow Bolt? Shadow Bolt. Warlock spell. My brain just... 3-mana deal 4. Totally reasonable removal option to have. 3-mana 1. The last two you're not going to use too much. The Poison Stealth. Historically, cards that are just like dedicated poison cards are not worth running. But again, you're not running that card. You're running the ability to sometimes have that card. And if you sometimes just have it in your hand, you're going to use it. So like a good example would be placed on turn 3 against an even lock. So now they can't Mountain Giant you because you'll just trade it and they have to like Hellfire your 3-drop and they're really sad. Just as an easy example, right? You're going to find places where a stealth poison minion is really obnoxious for your opponent to deal with. And spell damage, Druid benefits heavily from spell damage just because of Swipe. But Swipe isn't enough of a reason to run actual spell damage cards in your deck. So just having the ability to sometimes pair Swipe with spell damage is going to be a blowout. So I think all 4 modes are reasonable. Obviously the first 2 are what you're going to mostly use it for, and probably even just mostly as a 3-mana deal 4. But it's a 3-mana deal 4 that sometimes is gain a lot of life and slow down your opponent, or fuck up their plays with like Mountain Giants and shits, or wipe their board with Swipe and whatever. So it's like it's a lot of versatility in a card. If you're running a deck without Oaken Summons, I think you just put this in. Like literally, that's the only reason I can think of not to play this is Oaken Summons. Oh, and I guess Hedgehogs, because they're all beasts. So if you're not Taunt Druid, you play this card. Mark of the Loa. It looks kind of underwhelming, the buff, but it sits between like Velen's Chosen and Blessing of Kings, which are 2 of the best buffs ever printed. Plus you gain Taunt as well. So 2/4, the 2 is kind of like, I feel like a lot of people fixate on that, and they're like, oh man, it's only getting 2 attack. If you take any minion that you're actually putting into your deck, and you give it really any attack buff, it's big enough to kill any other minion. Other than, like, giants and stuff, right? But, like, just because of the way the stats work in the game, if you increase anything's attack, it has enough attack. So 2 is enough, and then 4 is a lot of health, and you're gaining Taunt. So you can compare this to, like, Spikered Steed. It's obviously a lot worse, Spikered Steed as a defensive buff, but even with that, just the initial 2/6 Taunt was often enough to fuck up your opponent's plans. And this comes down 2 turns earlier, which is a really, really big deal. So this is pretty good with protecting a board. You can play it on something to like protect a Violet Teacher. Obviously, you're putting this in like a token style deck. So you protect your Teacher, you protect your other tokens, you protect whatever you're trying to protect, and also pushing a bit of damage, maybe making some value trades. So already it's pretty reasonable. And then on top of that, you can just develop with 2 3/2s, which is not amazing. It's not quite Serenite tier, I don't think. I think the Taunt matters a lot. But still, it's close, and Serenite Chain Gang is like one of the best 4-drops in the format, so this card does everything a Toku Druid wants to do. It wants to develop onto the board, so if you don't have the board, you can go wide with 2 Raptors. It wants to buff its minions once they're on the board, and then it wants to protect its shit. And it does all of those things. I think this card's it's not like amazing. It's not going to revolutionize things. But if you're making a Token Druid, you probably want to put this in. And Token Druid's been pretty good not too long ago. Predatory Instincts. I thought this was going to be good because you can tutor out Hadronox, but then I remembered that Psychomelon exists. Psychomelon sounds worse because you can sometimes hit Okark, but if you hit Okark, you also get Hadronox anyways. So I think this card's probably bad. I was kind of excited because I like tutoring out legendaries, and I wish they'd print more of that, but this is not the class that needed it in this way. So, plus, also doubling the health is a downside. So I think the card's probably just bad. It might do good things. Tree Speaker, this looks really good. It's not. You compare it to the Taunt buff guy. So this is better stats. 5 mana 4/4 instead of 4 mana 2/3, much better. The buff's bigger, +3/+3 instead of +2/+2. But it's easier to have Taunt minions than Trance, because there's still not many generators for those. And it's a transform, which means if you already buffed your tokens, which is what your deck's trying to do, then it just removes those buffs and overwrites them and makes vanilla 5/5s. And also, it transforms them so they can't attack immediately, which is what you're trying to do. You're trying to make a lot of tokens, buff them, and swing, and this doesn't play well with either of those, and it only works with a specific type of token that you have a really hard time making. Your best way to make them is living mana, and it just gets rid of your mana if you do that. Also, you can't play it afterwards. So, in Standard, I think this card's complete trash at the moment. In Wild, you can play it with Living Roots on turn 6 to make 2 5/5s and a 4/4, and that might be fun. You're going to be up against Even Shaman, which might be less fun, but if you're going to try it in Wild. Stampeding Roar. Basically another Hadronox tool, honestly. It looks like to me, anyways. Maybe there's some sort of Beast Druid I'm not seeing beyond this. But I imagine you just want to cheat your Hadronox out, which is pretty good at that. You play him 3 turns earlier, and you get it killed faster because it can attack immediately. And it usually takes like at least 2 attacks to kill off the Hadronox, right? That being said, would you play 1 spell to cheat out 1 legendary minion from your deck? Probably not. Shaman did that before with Malygos, but they did it as part of an OTK. This is not an OTK, so it probably doesn't justify a slot. So I don't know. I don't see much hope for this. It's just a pack filler. Gonk, complete garbage. The effect is actually really good. The problem is that the body literally doesn't matter at all. So it being a 7-mana 4/9 is a massive downside to this card. You don't need a 7-mana 4/9 as a druid. Like, you just don't need that. So it's just too expensive for what it's doing. Plus it's a beast, so it doesn't play well with some of the other druid archetypes like Taunt. And the effect, when you get it in best case scenario, it's like a Fool's Bane, which was a good card, but not a card that made a lot of waves when it was around. If this cost if this was like a 4-mana 2/4, this would be so much better. But no, I think this is complete garbage. Unless we have Ironhide Direhorn, which is not offensively bad as far as pack fillers go. It's a cool design. A 7/7 and a 5/5 for 7's a lot of stats, and if you get more 5/5s, it's a lot more stats. And that's pretty cool. The problem is that to get the extra stats out, you have to play the 7/7 and then swing it into another minion instead of hitting your opponent in the face. And as far as value generators go, there are better value generators, and as far as putting stats onto the board and hitting your opponent in the face goes, there are better ways to do that too. And also it's a druid card, and they do better things in general, so that's that. So real quick, I don't know how long was that actually? 12 minutes? Okay. Yeah. I'm going to try to run through these real fast. But I just like to do... So in Hearthstone, you don't just play with your 30-card deck, right? Depending on what you're playing and what your opponent is playing. You can be playing with the entire card pool in any given game. So it's important whenever a set comes out, the card pool changes. Even cards that aren't going to see play change how the game plays as a whole. So it's good to go back and look at things. She got really thirsty and there's no water. I'm dying. Alright, so Hagatha's getting better. She got 2 great cards, 2 good cards. Hagatha's probably going to get a lot worse with rotation, so now would be probably the ideal time if you want to play Shaman with Hagatha. She's just getting better. Beast Deathstalker is getting slightly worse. He's better at playing a beast immediately. So when you play Rexar, you want to make a cheap beast for like a turn or 2 just to get something out there. And so the chicken and the tortoise are good for that, but once you hit 10 mana, you want to make big broken 8 drops like every turn if you're Deathstalker Rexar. And this, you're going to be slightly less able to do that. It's not really going to change the card. It's still the best Death Knight. Random mage spells. Scorch and Blast Wave are pretty good. Splitting Image is bad. And Elemental Evocation is bad in the kind of deck where you'd be getting random mage spells. But if you're doing Quest Mage, then it's actually sort of good because it's a 0 mana spell, right? So you can just instantly... A lot of the times you'll have an issue where you generate these spells and then you don't have enough time to play them to complete the quest. So having a 0 mana spell in the pool is honestly not that bad. So yeah, not too much of a change there. Scorch and Blast Wave are pretty good though. So we have random spell discovers. There's a new, if you're holding a dragon, discover a spell neutral card. And then Hunter also has their own discover. So I'm looking at Hunter, Priest, Druid, and Warrior, because I think those are the classes most likely to run the dragon card, and also for Hunter they have their own thing. So Hunter is, if you're doing the dragon card, it's not good. The Hunter random spell card pool is not good for that kind of deck. So shockingly, I don't think Dragon Hunter is going to happen this meta. But if you're doing the Bloodscalp Strategist route in like a Beast deck, there's a lot of spells that are really, really good to discover if you're playing Beasts and you have the board, which is a lot of conditionals, but they're really good. Like the the quality of the spells is good if you can make that happen. And I think Beast Hunter is in a place where it probably can take the board more often than you'd think. Even against things like Heelzu and Baku Rogue. It's not too hard to get ahead. So if you do that and you have time to equip a weapon and play a non-beast 2/4 and still have the board, then you have really powerful options. I don't know if you're going to be able to do that, but it's worth noting that if you do it, the reward is there. Priest spells are ridiculously high quality, like the best in the game. There's like the 0 mana spells are bad. There's a few outliers like Power or Replicate and Embrace Darkness, which even those are like situationally good. So I'd imagine Dragon Priest is going to be a thing. So like the payoff for the 2-drop is just so high. They've so many amazing spells. Druid has a lot of mana with which to ramp up and then play Big Dragon. So I want to look at Dragon Druid, and the Druid spell pool is reasonably high quality. There's some weaker stuff in there. And then there's some pretty bad stuff like Moonfire, Witchwood Apple, Savagery, Stampeding Roar, and so on. But in general, I think the quality of the card pool is high enough that you're going to be happy taking at least one of the cards off the Discover every time. And again, you have the mana and the card draw to like get up and do big, powerful value dragon things as a Druid. So I think Dragon Druid might be worth looking into. I'm definitely going to try it on launch. And the payoff is quite high. There are some obviously pretty broken Druid spells to discover as well. And then Warrior is interesting because that's where they're like pushing dragons, but it's one of the worst spell pools for the 2-drop. They're reasonably high quality, but a lot of them are pretty weak if you don't have the right tools to pair with them. So there's a lot of cards that care about you having armor. There's a lot of cards that care about you having weapons of a certain size, damaged minions, your opponent having damaged minions, you having minions to rush into their minions, stuff like that. Where if you meet the condition, they can be quite powerful to discover. But there's so many different conditions. It's not like Hunter where it's like, have beasts. Warrior's like, have all warrior things, and then maybe you'll find something you like. So I don't know. It's not like terrible. But I think the payoff isn't there as much as it is with other classes. So if Dragon Warrior's a thing, we might actually just not even see him run the new 2-drop. Because I think it's very inconsistent. Paladins have the new spell that discovers a 6-drop and gives it Taunt and Divine Shield. And the 6-drops for Paladin are extremely good. There's a few outright bad cards. There's like 3/3s and stuff. And then there's there's bad 6-drops that suddenly become really good when you get them off this. Like Spark Drill. I've never seen anyone play Spark Drill. Or Sabertooth Stalker. These are meme pack filler cards. But if you give them Divine Shield, they become really, really powerful cards. Which is kind of funny. So you definitely want to look into that new Paladin spot. I think it's actually quite powerful. The pool is quite powerful. I don't know about the card itself. Spiteful Summoner, always worth looking at. Like usual, I'm looking at 6s, 8s, and 10s because those are the most likely mana costs for the different decks that would want to be trying to build a Spiteful, different classes that would be wanting to build a Spiteful deck. So 6s are kind of getting worse. Mage keeps shitting up the 6s. We got another 3/3 with Arcanosaur. And then we have Kragwazi, he, and Soul Warden, which are just like kind of meh. So 6s, whatever. 8s have been one of the best mana slots, and then they just totally dumped on it this time. So there's two pretty okay cards. They're actually more like kind of mediocre cards. they're on the bad side of okay. Excuse me. There's Mosh Og Enforcer, which is a pretty reasonable card, honestly. It's really big, it's hard to kill. The problem with it is that if you're playing a Spiteful Summoner, you're trying to make a lot of stats appear to kill your opponent with. And a 2/14 is really, 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 really bad at killing your opponent. So the card itself isn't terrible, but getting it off of a Spiteful roll is really bad. And then Akali, just a 5/5 rush. You might draw like Ziliax and then it's pretty good, but I think most of the time it's pretty meh. And then you have some really bad ones. Undertaker, Talanji, Hook Tusk, and Hirek are all terrible. Hirek, notably, is a 1/1 with no abilities. None of them have abilities. They're just vanilla piles of garbage that make you wish you were playing a different deck. They're all really bad. And yeah, they've kind of nuked 8s. So 8 may no longer be like one of the best mana slots to hit. I don't know. I should have actually gone to look at the full pool again. But my instinct says that that's enough to make it, to dilute it enough that you don't really want to try to force 8s anymore. And 10s are basically the same. They gain Hakar, which is kind of bad, but kind of cool as well. So you really want to get those 10s. Evolve in general just keeps getting worse. They keep printing really low-statted niche minions. Although it's worth pointing out that evolving into a 3, so evolving from a 2 into a 3, is really good now. Not necessarily really good, but it got a lot better. There's still a lot of bad 3 drops, but they gained Dire Troll, which is a 2/6 taunt. They gained the 3/5 Tortoise. They gained Sand Drudge and 4 Spider Tanks in the pool. So evolving your 2 drops is much more reliable than it was before, but probably still don't play Evolve Shaman. Random Dragons. There's a warrior card that makes random dragons. On the whole, they're quite good. Very high odds of hitting something that's big and meaty, and even like the weaker cards aren't too bad. There's a few really shitty dragons, and it's worth pointing out this isn't a discover. It's just you get random dragons. So you are going to get the bad cards from time to time. Like there's the 4-drop that discounts your weapons and stuff. There's a few shitty ones like that, but for the most part, yeah, random dragons are quite good. They've actually got quite a bit better in this set too. And then last thing is not really a changing RNG pool, but tests. Test's RNG pool changes based on the meta, and you can't really predict the meta. In spite of what people will tell you, it's really hard because the meta is just how many people are playing what. And it's really hard to predict what people are going to want to play because there's inertia. Once a deck gets hyped up, a lot more people will play it and you get disproportionate swings. So it's hard to say exactly what we're going to see. What you don't want to see is rogues if you're going Tespionage. So Odd Rogue didn't really gain anything. They gained the new weapon, which is really good. I don't know if they're going to play it because they already have a really good weapon as their class identity. And Pirate Rogue looks like it could be good. So if Pirate Rogue takes off, if Odd Rogue is still highly represented, maybe don't play as much Tespionage. It might still be pretty mediocre. There should still be lots of Hunter and Druid. Probably more Mage. Mage got a lot of really cool cards. Maybe more Priest even. And possibly more Warrior or Warlock, which would be bad. Those are bad card pools to get random things from. Although Warrior is good because they're usually really slow and you can grind them out. But yeah. I don't know. I don't even know why I add this section, honestly. Because it's like impossible to predict the meta. But anyway, that's the video. That's it. So, Druid is garbage. They got a few. They got like 1 or 2, I guess 3 good cards. But they're still going to be doing fine because they're Druid. And the RNG is not changing too much, but 8s get really bad. That's mainly the thing you can take away from all that. Don't play Spiteful Priest, probably, with Free from Amber. But yeah, that's going to be it. See you in the next part.